Last year, I released a documentary called Before She's Gone, which is about my grandparents, Stan and Shirley Fryer. They were married for 69 years, which is about 55 years longer than your average marriage in Canada, and way longer than swiping left. My grandmother passed away recently. We had her ceremony on their 70th wedding anniversary. It was a really beautiful day. But what made their relationship even more special, besides being together for 7 decades, is that for the last 17 years of their marriage, Grandma had Alzheimer's and was largely the inspiration for the film. I'll admit, when I was editing, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew it was about my grandparents, I knew it was about Alzheimer's, but I didn't know the story. And one day, I was watching some footage with my wife, and who's also my producer, by the way. And it was a clip of Grandpa talking about how he used to hug her 60 times a day and sing her goodnight and kiss her. And my wife leans over and presses pause, and she said, no, this is not a film about Alzheimer's. This is a love story. And as soon as she said that, it all sort of clicked. I knew how to make that film. I knew how to tell that story. And editing became relatively easy after that, putting together their love story. When the film came out, we received a lot of unexpected attention. We were featured on a national newscast. There's a web article that got shared thousands of times around the world. We even made it on the front page of Reddit for a few hours. It was really exciting, lots of attention. But what really stuck out is that we were doing a radio interview, and Grandpa was describing his daily routine of compassion, showing up to the hospital, loving her as best as he could. The radio interviewer leans over, interrupts him, and he asked him a question. This is what he said.
The doctors, the scientists are still trying to realize what causes Alzheimer's, what it is there a cure, can it be managed? Have they come to you and asked you or studied your case because you seem to have found part of the answer, and that is attachment and love and caring?
Now, I don't know if you know anything about Alzheimer's, but from the time you're diagnosed, it's about a 6 to 8 year lifespan. Well, Grandma, she had it for 17 years, double that. So his question made sense. And it kind of stuck with me for quite a while. And it got me thinking, well, is there any sort of scientific reasoning that love can impact our bodies? What is the science of love? Can it even be deconstructed and measured in a lab? What is love? No, I love cheese. I love cheese probably a little too much. But I'm not sure that's the type of love we're talking about. Historically, the Greeks described love as madness of the gods. Shakespeare said love is blindness, lovers cannot see. More recently, Maya Angelou, she described love as like a virus. It can happen to anybody at any time. I'm still not sure this is the type of love we're talking about. Love is a pretty tricky thing to describe. Luckily, my grandfather, he has a pretty good definition of the type of love we're talking about. This is what he had to say.
People used to ask me, how do you have so much patience with your wife? And I say, I don't have any patience at all. I'm the most impatient person yet. But you have so much patience with your wife. I said, I have love for my wife. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love doesn't worry about myself, worries about the other person. You know, love is a decision, not an emotion.
Love is a decision, not an emotion. To me, this implies a clear intent of selflessness. And I think this is much closer to the type of love we're talking about. I like to call this type of love conscious compassion. So is there actually any sort of scientific evidence that conscious compassion can impact our bodies? Well, I certainly hope so. Otherwise, this would be a very short talk. And yes, there is. There was a study in Ohio. They looked at blisters on hands. And those couples that received warmth and love and compassion from their partners healed twice as fast compared to those that received the opposite. There was another massive study of 127,000 adults. Those that were in happy, loving, compassionate relationships had less headaches, less backaches, less sick days. Next time your partner, your child, your friend, your coworker asks for an aspirin for their headache, try this. See what happens. You may want to ask for permission, of course, but consider just for a moment the type of impact you can have on your own life if you show yourself a little bit of the same type of compassion. Now, I'm not saying we need more vanity or narcissism in this world. I think we have far too much of that. But next time you're going for that selfie, try a little bit of self-love instead. See what happens. Our bodies seem uniquely hardwired for love. There was a study where they looked at brain scans of those people in love. And it actually measures quite closely to those people high in cocaine. And what this means is that our thresholds for pleasure are lowered, so we feel good way easier. Our pain sensors fire less, so we feel a lot better, and the world just seems like a happier place. And there's a lot less levels of the stress hormone known as cortisol. This sounds a lot like my grandmother, who in the care home, a lot of the doctors, nurses, other patients, visitors would often comment how happy and at ease she was. She was always laughing, singing, chuckling to herself. She didn't ignore her Alzheimer's. In fact, she readily accepted it and leaned quite heavily on a lot of this compassion that came her way every single day. Scientists and psychologists have even measured out the 3 stages of love. The first stage, lust, where women, a lot more estrogen, men, more testosterone. And yes, my grandparents had a lot of lust for each other, even 7 decades later. I'll admit I've had some strange and kind of awkward conversations with my grandfather about this. And let's be honest, we don't really talk about seniors and sex in our society. As I get older, though, the less taboo it begins to seem. And luckily, my wife's pretty hot, so I'm feeling okay. The second stage, attraction, of increased chemicals called dopamine, which is often released when we get a like, a follow, a comment. There's also a lot more chemical called norepinephrine, which increases our vigilance, our arousal, our attention. It also increases in the formation of memories. And conversely, the loss of neurons that fire norepinephrine are found in patients with Alzheimer's. I think we're starting to see some clues, some scientific basis of what was going on inside my grandmother's body as she wrestled with this fateful disease. The last stage, attachment, a little less dopamine, but a lot more of the hormone called oxytocin, also known as the love hormone, which is released naturally when we hug and cuddle or when we bond socially. I'm guessing there was a lot of oxytocin flowing through those bodies when he sang her goodnight, kissed her, hugged her. Simply put, our bodies love being in love, which makes sense from an evolutionary biological point of view. More people together, more offspring. But what gets me really excited is when you combine all these wonderful, amazing qualities of love and you begin to mix it with the latest advances in quantum mechanics. I don't know if you've ever heard of entanglement, but it's the idea that 2 particles, once they interact with each other, They can instantly impact each other across thousands of miles, maybe even galaxies, in an instant. They have no idea how. They have no idea why. They just knows that it happens. So imagine the possibilities of quantum love rippling out throughout our universe, especially in our hyper-connected world of today. It's almost close to magic. But before we dive too far down the rabbit hole of quantum mechanics, evolutionary biology, and dopamine and chemicals, I'd like to bring it back to the simple story of one man loving one woman. And I'd like to introduce my grandfather, Stanley Fryer.
Isn't he incredible? Do you know that the lips are one of the most sensitive parts of the body? In fact, it may be the most sensitive part of the body. I'd like to talk to you about kissing. I've been a long time on this earth, and I've witnessed a lot of kissing. And it's interesting that I'm not an expert, but I do like kissing. There are those that pucker up when they kiss. And when they do that to me, I kiss them on the cheek. There are those that just have a peck, and it goes by so fast that you wonder what happened. Then there are others that kiss like a hard-boiled egg, and it's so firm. There are others that kiss like a soft, poached egg, and that's so sloppy. Then there are others that kiss like a fried egg. I'll let you imagine what that's like. But I want to talk to you about the soft, silky, loving lips. You see, when my wife was no longer able to communicate with me verbally, she did through her lips. When I would go in to visit her and give her a kiss on the lips, if they were soft, silky, and loving, I knew that things were just right. But if I kissed her and her lips were hard, I knew there was something wrong. It could be the fact that they forgot to put her bra on. Maybe she had wet diapers. It could be any number of things that was wrong. But when I was able to determine what the problem was and correct it, then we would get back to those soft, silky, loving lips. On a 2-hour visit with my wife in the evening in the nursing home, I probably kissed her 10 or 12 times. That's just to reassure her and let her know that I loved her. During the days when we were together, I would hug her 40, 50, 60 times a day. Because you see, she didn't have a memory. And she had no idea that I had just hugged her 3 seconds ago. I used to sing her to sleep. I'd kneel down by the bed, take her hand, and her head was that close to mine. And I would sing her Anne Murray's song, "Can I Have This Dance?" And it goes like this. Can I have this dance for the rest of my life? Would you be my partner every night? When we're together, it seems so right. Can I have this dance for the rest of my life? You know, when I hug my wife, when I hold her hand, when I kiss her and sing her to sleep, it changes the environment to one of love. When you change the environment and the feeling of love, it changes our bodies. You know, we all communicate one way or another through the act of conscious compassion. I like to hug people. When I go to church, when I sing in the choir, I teach pickleball, and when I play pickleball, I hug everybody. I have never had anybody that said, I didn't want a hug. As a matter of fact, some people that haven't been hugged for quite some time, they want a second hug. You know, it's most interesting that when people have hugs, it changes their whole life. As a matter of fact, I'd like to tell you a little story. Last Friday, it was just last Friday that when I was playing pickleball, a man came up to me and said, Stan, you've been hugging me for the last 3 or 4 months. And he said, I finally got courage to hug my wife and children. And you know, it changed, he said, it changed the whole atmosphere of his home to love.
Learning this lesson that the power of intentional love can actually transform our bodies is by far and away the most important lesson I've learned from this guy. I've learned a few. We have the power, you have the power to impact yourself, everyone around you, maybe even change the world. That seems a little lofty, so I have an idea. I'm going to start. Let's see if we can change this room. Everybody stand up. Let's turn to the person next to you. Give them a hug. Let's see what happens. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.